Now we'll continue with Becca Horsley from UCAS. Becca will update us on UCAS developments and what's waiting for us in future. Becca, it's over to you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Samra. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all having a good day. So as Samra said, I'm just going to talk you through some key updates for this cycle. We've got a bit of data about Turkish students for you, and also going to share some resources just so you know how to find the tools to support you with your students. Sorry, I think this... Okay, so first of all, one thing that I really wanted to update you on, as you can see in the photo here, this is a slide from our international conference. This is an event that we put on in the summer, and that's to really support our advisor network in person, to give you the opportunity to come and network with each other. And we're pleased to say that we have now released the dates for this. Bookings are open, and this will be taking place in June this year, on the 10th and the 11th of June. And for the first time in quite a few years, it's not going to be in London. We're going to go to Edinburgh this year. So that's a really great opportunity for anyone who's able to attend to come along and understand some of the different parts of the UK that you might be wanting to support your students with accessing. So that's a really good opportunity. If anyone is interested in learning more about that, Semra can pass you my details afterwards and I can talk you through that process. But we'll get started with some data about Turkey. So we've gathered some trends that might be of interest to you. One of the most interesting things about Turkey, and I know those of you who were here when I came to speak to you in person in September will have already heard me say this, is that you are the largest market for the growth of international students coming to the UK. If you look at that difference in the numbers between 2019 and 2023, you can see that you've almost doubled the number of applications to the UK. There's also a really good acceptance rate from Turkey. So typically some of the countries that we see, the acceptance rate is as low as around 30%. So that 40s, mid 40s is a very, very good acceptance rate, which means that the guidance that advisors like yourselves are giving to your students is effective. You're counselling them to go to places where they have a good chance of being successful and being able to actually go and attend the opportunities that they've received. A bit of a split of how Turkish students are spread across the 4 nations of the UK, because we do always talk about how there are the whole 4 nations. There's an amazing breadth of opportunities across all the parts of the UK and outside of those big cities that may be the ones you're more familiar with. In terms of the spread of Turkish students, there's a bit more focus on England than we sometimes see with international students, and there's a bit less focus on Scotland. Northern Ireland, because there's only the 3 universities there, it's typical that we would see a smaller percentage, but it's quite nice that there is that 6% going to Scotland as well. So again, that Edinburgh, that might be of interest to grow some more interest in perhaps sending students to Scotland. But typically, just due to the volumes of university, this spread isn't incredibly unusual of how those international students are dispersed. And something just to point out as well is that from our data, around 6% of Turkish applicants in 2023 were made through a clearing route, which is quite interesting. So that means, I'll talk to you a bit more detail about clearing later, but it's interesting that that is a very viable route for students coming from Turkey. And that's something that perhaps as advisors, if you're not currently supporting students with the clearing process, or you haven't done that much research on it, something that we can support you to learn more about, to really understand how to support those growing number of students using that part of the application process. And then just a quick update on some of the subjects. Again, most of these are quite typical of what we see from students coming to study from around the world. The only one to point out that's a little bit different for Turkey is that design, creative, performing arts. So it's great to see that in there, that there's a bit of variety in the kind of courses that people are coming to study. And the social sciences for Turkey, just to point out, that is pretty much psychology for Turkey, rather than the broader spread of the social sciences. Those least popular subjects, again, those are typically what we see with students from across the globe. So Turkey is largely falling in line with other nations international students are coming from in terms of their subject preferences. To give you a quick update on the dates, we're obviously partway through the application cycle and we've already passed that October deadline. So the next key deadline that you should be working towards with your students is the equal consideration date. So the equal consideration date is when the courses still have to consider all applications fairly and equally in line with all the others, as long as the applications are received. And just to point out that that is by 6 p.m. UK time that applications need to be received to consider that. I know that you're a couple of hours ahead of the UK, so you have that advantage of that being at the end of your working day rather than having to get up really early like people on the west of the UK do. But it's really important that wherever possible, you try to support your students to meet that deadline to ensure that they have the best chance of their application being considered fairly and equally in line with all the other applications received. The universities cannot close their courses before this date. There will still be places available after that date, and students can send their application all the way up until the 30th of June in our main application cycle. So if you're working with a student who's really unsure, it can sometimes be better to make sure they're making the right choices by going beyond that deadline, but just be aware you might need to be a little bit more flexible with the kind of courses that they're looking at, or perhaps looking at different institutions that they hadn't considered before if they are looking beyond that date. But there will definitely still be places available. We just recommend that that's a really good date to meet where it's appropriate for your student. And then 2 more parts of the application cycle to point out to you. So we have something called UCAS Extra, and that will open from the end of February. And this is included in that application fee that your students have already paid. And this is a way for students to look at perhaps they haven't got an offer that they're happy with from their main application. So they've put in their 5 application choices. Maybe they didn't receive an offer, or maybe they were not happy with the offers that they received, so they want to decline any offer that they've received. So Extra can be used by anyone who is not currently holding a place and they're not currently waiting on any decisions. And what they can do is they can search through their options that are still available on UCAS, and they can discuss these with the universities, and then one at a time they can add an additional choice. They can wait to hear the decision on that choice, and then if they're successful and they want to accept that, obviously that's great, they've now got their place. If they are unsuccessful, or perhaps they don't like the offer that they've received, they can keep using this process all the way through until that 30th of June to support them to find a place they're happy with. So although the initial UCAS application allows them 5 choices, this is a way that if perhaps they were unsuccessful with those first 5 choices, that within that same application fee, they can still add additional university applications directly through UCAS. We also have our clearing process, and this opens in the summer. So students can use clearing for many different reasons. So some students will apply directly into clearing. Perhaps they were thinking of a different country and then they've changed their mind and applying to the UK quite late. They can use it perhaps because they didn't receive the results they were expecting and need to explore other opportunities. Or it could be they've actually really exceeded the results that they were expecting and now they want to see what else is available to them. Now they've got that higher grade profile. And it's a really good way for students to see what's available. If they're still holding an offer, then of course they don't need to use clearing, but what we'd recommend is have a look around, see if there's anything in there that's appropriate for them. And if there's something that they'd like to take the opportunity of, once they've spoken to the university and understood exactly what they're doing, they can decline a place and explore those other options. And that's a really good way for students who've maybe changed their mind as well. Perhaps they think they want to go to a different city to the one they're holding an offer at, or they've changed their mind about the course profile. So it's really just a way to give those students that flexibility and ensure that at that crucial stage when they're actually coming to study, they have the opportunity to explore their options and make sure that it is the correct course that they're wanting to come for. We do say with any students that you're working with that need a visa, just make sure that they are paying attention to the visa deadlines and not applying too late into the clearing process, just because they need that time to make sure they're arriving ready for their classes. And we know that the later you get into the academic year, the harder that can be because a lot of people are pushing for those visas. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you some resources that we have available to help with that research journey on the UCAS website. We've been out doing a lot of trips in market recently. As I said, I was out with you guys in Turkey back in September. And these are some of the resources that we've seen people don't particularly know about internationally. So we wanted to just share them again so you know what free tools that are available to you when you're working with your students. So we have our city and location guides, and these are to really help those students who haven't had the opportunity to perhaps explore the UK. So they can look at these, understand the profile of a city, understand where it's located within the UK, what kind of culture, what kind of events, whether it's rural, whether it's a really big city, to help them see what might be a good fit for them, because we want to ensure that all students are not only getting a great educational experience, but also enjoying themselves. They're going to be living in this place for at least 3 years of their life, and we want them to be happy there, as well as getting that excellent degree outcome, because we know that students who are happy, they're having a good social life, they're enjoying the city they're living in, the happier they are, the more likely they are to do well in their degree, because they're having a really great time overall. We've also got some subject tasters and guides, because part of the process is also ensuring that they're really happy with the degree course that they're taking and it's a good fit for them, and ensuring that actually it's going to go onto a profession that they want to go into as well, that they're using that degree and getting the value out of what they have paid for in terms of their education. So we've got 2 new resources here that I'd really like to flag with you to support the students with that process to make sure they're getting a good fit. So we have some virtual classes that students can take. These are short courses designed by the universities to give tasters of the subjects, particularly ones where students maybe haven't had the opportunity to study that before. So one of the examples for this is there is a law class called What is Murder Anyway? And that is all talking about a module that you would look at as part of your law course, talking about the ethics and things like that. And it's very interesting for students to get that opportunity to study a bit of that course before they actually go there. It's something really good they can also include in their personal statement to show about what they've been doing in terms of their research, but it's also helping them know that the course is going to be a good fit for them, because if they don't enjoy a short course in that subject, they're certainly not going to enjoy taking it for 3 years. And these are free, again, available to the students, and they can take multiple of these courses if they want to. Have the virtual work experiences as well, so students can take these online. Some of these are available internationally. Just make sure that you're checking, because a few are limited to UK students, but a wide variety of them are also available internationally, so just have a check if you're recommending these to your students. We also have a careers quiz for those students who perhaps don't know what it is that they're wanting to study, and you can direct them towards this. I took it myself, and it recommended that I work in the education sector, so it was quite accurate for me. But that's a good way to kind of funnel them into certain courses as a first point of looking at something, because it draws out the skills that are important to them and what they might want to be looking at doing in terms of their career once they've graduated. And then we also have our chat to a student feature, which is where they can ask the questions that they feel are really important to them. So they can ask about course content if they're looking at a specific course. They can ask about the reality of living in a city. And they can also just ask about the general experience of being in the UK as a Turkish student, because they can filter based on the university, based on the subject, or based on the nationality of the student as well, if they're particularly wanting to speak to somebody from their home country to really understand what it's like for those students. And that's a really good way. They can speak again to as many students as they want, completely for free, and that's a good way to help them with that research journey as well, to make them feel assured that they're making a good choice for them. And then some application top tips. Again, these are things that we've picked up on that are where mistakes are most commonly made from international students and their advisors. So just to flag these to you. So accurate personal details. We know that some people, they may have a preferred name that they use. For example, myself, I prefer to be called Becca, but my legal name is Rebecca. So I need to ensure that anything in terms of application, you're putting your name as it is in your legal documents, like your passport, and as it will be represented presented on your academic documents that you're sending in with your grades. Also, just remember that the date of birth should be in the British format, so the date, month, year, rather than the American format of month, date, year, just because we can change it afterwards, but it takes a bit of time, so just make sure that to speed up the process, that's in there correctly. Pay attention to communications and deadlines. So we have our own UCAS deadlines, which are on the slide that I just showed you, but there are also deadlines set by universities. So for example, once you've sent in your application, a university may ask for a certain document to be provided, and they will give you a deadline to do that. So just make sure that you're paying attention to all of these. If you are signed up as a registered centre, you will be able to see what the universities have requested and sent to the students in your advisor portal to have that oversight. So that's a really good way to stay on top of that and support your students with meeting those deadlines. Research is key. So I've just shown you on the last few slides a couple of resources to really support your students with that research journey, but making sure that they understand the entry requirements, make sure they understand the courses they're applying to is a really good way to make sure that they are having the best chances of success by applying to courses that fit their academic profile, but also fit them as a person. Reach out. So if you are not sure about anything, if it's to do with the UCAS application system, either you as the advisor or the student can reach out to us and we can support. If it's something specifically about the course or the fees, you can speak to the universities directly. They all have international admissions teams and international recruitment teams whose job it is to support you. Or if it's a more general question just about how the city is, you can reach out to those Uni Buddy ambassadors that we showed on the last slide. And then finally, setting a registered centre qualification shortlist. So the education section is where students most often go wrong on the application form. So if you are a school who is a registered centre, make sure that you're listing the qualifications that your school offers in your qualification shortlist. If you are an agent working with students, we'd recommend putting the most common qualifications of your country. So we'd recommend putting in the Turkish diploma, but also things like the International Baccalaureate, American diploma, just to give the students a bit of a guideline when they're completing that education section to make sure they have the best chance of selecting the right qualifications on there. And that again speeds up the whole process for everybody. And then again, just to go over a few changes. So we've amended the where you live section. So we are now collecting address data for the last 3 years. We've added in some additional residency nationality questions, and this is really being collected to support universities with that fee status section. We know that sometimes there's a bit of a debate about what fee status students should be, and you can also indicate why they have been living in that country. So perhaps if it is you're working with a British student who has been living in Turkey because of their parents' work, you can indicate that. And we are not making the decisions about this at UCAS. We're just facilitating this to speed up the process for those universities. The education section, we have just improved the quality of data that we're collecting, just to make sure that it's a bit easier when it comes to that matching process as part of the application. And we've also moved the language score test reporting if your student is taking an IELTS or a TOEFL into this section if they have taken that test at the point of application. In terms of personal statements, so the big change is the personal statement change, and that will be coming for 2026 entry. So you don't need to worry about this for this cycle, the students you're currently working with. It will be the students that are applying this time next year. So it's a big change, but there's also a lot that's remaining the same. So while we are changing the structure, we really want to offer a scaffolded approach to break what was once a long piece of writing, that 4,000 characters, down into 3 sections to really support students with knowing what it is that they need to be providing for universities. So this will be 3 questions with prompts about what we'd expect to see in each of these. We've started releasing this guidance to yourself as advisors, and we'll start releasing it to students in the future. We just didn't want to release it until we're a bit further along in this 2025 cycle because we don't want to confuse this year's students. Each section will have a minimum character count of 350 in each section, and then the rest of the characters can be spread how you'd like across those 3 questions. It will remain 4,000 characters total, just split across those 3 parts. And it's really important to remember for this as well, that the same person at the university will be reading all three parts, so all three sections. So if your student is getting a bit fixated on what goes in question 1, what goes in question 2, because it could apply, that's fine. Just tell them that the same person will be looking at that. It's really to give them that support and guidance, that scaffolding to know that they're including everything expected from the universities. And then just to have a quick look here at what those questions will be. So these are what we'd be expecting to see. I'm sure that anyone who's looking at this who has supported students with their personal statement, there's nothing in these questions that you wouldn't already be advising students to put in a strong statement. So the why is very much the motivation of the student. So what interests them about that subject? How does it link to a future career? The how the qualifications and studies have prepared them, so reflecting on what they've been studying in school and how that can connect directly to the course they're going to study. So drawing out perhaps a particular module that they really liked. This isn't just listing their qualifications again, it's reflecting on what they've learned both in terms of content, but also things like transferable skills, so their time management, their teamwork that lead well into the degree they're going to study. And then the what they've done to prepare outside of their education. So these are the things like their extracurriculars and their supercurriculars, and these need to be relevant to the course they're applying to. So it's really great if they've been the captain of a sports team at their school, but what we say in terms of including it in the personal statement is, so what? Why are you including this? Because how does it link back to the course? So make sure that if they're saying, I was the captain of the football team, they're saying, and that taught me teamwork, which is important if I'm going to go into business, because we need to work together as part of a team and they need that strong leadership figure. And my goal is to eventually run my own business. So this is a transferable skill I've learned from that course. I will be sharing these slides, so you'll have a copy of all these questions as well to look at and go over as well. And we've got a lot of webinars available online if you want to go over this in a lot more detail. Also, just to make you aware of our parents guide. So for the first time this year, we've included some international specific pages in our parents guide. And again, this is completely free on our website for you to direct parents towards. We know families are really important in helping to make those decisions for students. So make sure that you're showing this. It's a really great resource. And sometimes it can take a bit of that pressure off you as advisors if they're hearing it kind of from the source of the UCAS application form. So it supports you. A couple of ways that we can stay in touch just to keep you up to date with these application updates. So we have our monthly newsletter. You can sign up for free. We have our advisor lives. These happen once a month. One is specifically international, so you can sign up for that, and they're on our website if you can't make it live to watch back. We have training and conferences. I mentioned our international conference in the summer. And we also have the advisor section of our website where you can download all the key resources to support you. And if anyone has questions about a specific resource they think they would like, which doesn't currently exist, please get in touch with me and I can support you with where you can find that advice and guidance and look at it as a future area for development. So, and this is just our advisor guide as well. That's where you can really find any question, the answer to any question that you might have about the UCAS application process for each cycle. We update this every year, so make sure you're clicking on the right one. And thank you very much. I think we've got about 5 minutes for questions as well.
Thank you,
anyone's
Becca.
got anything?
Yeah, let's ask the audience. There's one question coming for you. Just a sec.
Thank you very much, Becca, for this lovely presentation. As an advisor or counselor, I may say, I'm in a bit of trouble with ChatGPT and other AI tools. These were supposed to be, making our lives easier, but now I really find myself in a hassle because the students are using these tools and they're sending us to drafts which are detected in the AI detectors. And instead of focusing on the content of the essays, I find myself trying to humanize first all these, texts. So I just want to ask, what is the position of UCAS when the admission officers towards the essays which are, detected in several tools? I don't know what percentage, but are we supposed to be uploading the essays 100% human, or is there, is there a percentage threshold that is accepted by UCAS? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So what we say in terms of this is, so we do have a similarity detection tool, and what that will do is check how similar the personal statement is to other statements that have been submitted. So obviously, if people are using a very basic prompt on ChatGPT or similar software, what will happen is it will come out very similar, because if 1,000 students say, write me a personal statement to study business in the UK, there's only limited resources. So that will not come up as very personal. So that will then flag as similar. We do not make the decisions about similarity. What we do is we record it, and then when we pass the applications to the university, we tell them what that percentage is, because always there will be some similarity, particularly if students have used quotes, for example. There's only so many ways you can say, I've always wanted to be a doctor, those statements. So there is an acceptable level, and each university defines that themselves. So we don't set that, we just give them the information. How we would encourage the use of AI is we would say that it can be used as a way to help formulate your thoughts, but then it's a personal statement. It does need to be personal. And having worked in the university admissions team, it is very obvious when the statement has not come from the student themselves. So we'd say more use it to help structure and support, get your thoughts in order, but then just use that as a foundation. And then they do still need to be writing it themselves, we'd recommend.
Thank you, Becca. Any other questions?